to you on a Tuesday. We'll talk Monday Night Raw ratings, everything wacky going on with WWE SummerSlam, apparently not being in the Performance Center where WWE's been for the past few months. We'll also talk about AEW and how a big breakout independent wrestling star is going to get another shot at the big time on TNT. So much to get into. Also, a debate. Is WWE burying their fan favorites? That's what came up today on social media. All that today and more on today's podcast. If you're joining us on YouTube, thank you so much. We're now live streaming there as well. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Go and give us a like our videos, all of our interviews, everything you hear with this podcast is up there too. We know there's some just YouTube people. Also, the fun thing is if you're a YouTube person, you can watch us on a lot of televisions now. So thank you for doing that. I know I've heard from some people overseas that say they're watching us on Roku and Apple TVs and stuff like that. So it's really, really fun. And we're trying to grow it out here. I'm joined, as always, by my faithful friend. He works in the wrestling media world. Okay, you can see his stuff on WrestleZone and this other website called Fightful.com. So, of course, once again, the fun killer is with me, Robert DeFelice, in the proverbial germ war zone that is Florida at the moment. Robert, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. You know, this is the epicenter to a degree of COVID-19, or one of the many now in the United States. Mm-hmm. And that's going to lead to some very unique challenges for WWE and just for life moving forward. But WWE seems determined, Kevin, to get out of the Orlando, Florida Performance Center and into maybe something a little more zany.
Zany, wacky was the word that was used on an investor call. Reportedly, Vince McMahon wanted to try something wacky with WWE SummerSlam. And there's been a lot of speculation, nothing that we can really confirm. We checked into this a little bit last night on our post-Raw show. You and I liked Raw. Some other people didn't. And we'll talk about some things with Raw. But let's stay on topic here with SummerSlam potentially moving to a separate venue, whatever venue that might be, that isn't the Performance Center. And I think this is a pretty welcome thing. Hardcore WWE fans, I think, want this. I think a casual wrestling fan that may have tuned out in the last few months wants something like this. It would be interesting to see what WWE could do here. Of the major companies, obviously they're in a position where they logistically could try something like this, but it won't be easy. You know, it won't be easy to do this, especially in our COVID-19 times. Where can you go? Where can it be safe? You know, people say it's probably a lot easier to run something in the open air. There's been a lot of science that proves stuff in open air is somewhat safer, but how much safer is it being that close to people, you know? So I mean, and there's some talk of, will there be fans at this? If there is, it'll be minimal, but could it be somewhere else outside of the Performance Center? It leans in that direction that there could be something with SummerSlam in the next few weeks, just 3 weeks from now, that could be outside of the Performance Center. Does that add to the show for you? Does that make the show more appealing to you than just a fun big show? Just it's wrestling somewhere that isn't the Performance Center?
So here is my immediate takeaway. I don't like that the CEO of the company is using the word wacky to describe what is typically your second biggest event of the year. I think part of the problem with the Performance Center shows is the cinematic matches have taken a turn for the wacky, and I think people are over the wacky. I think they just want somewhat of a return to normalcy. So if we get...
You don't get that. we don't get that until we get fans.
I know we don't, but if we get SummerSlam that's on a boat and like everything is nautical themed and there's like a you know, ring the buoy match or something, I don't know. Like,
yeah. I think if you do that, there's no way not to go in that direction. So there's some... It's to be clear, it's not understood if the entire event itself will be in a different location. If this will be something that lends itself to a cinematic match, like we saw with Money in the Bank, which took place at the headquarters, and that very much went in a comedy direction, and WWE leaned into the comedy stuff. I liked it. Other people didn't like it. I thought it was fine. I thought they did some challenging things, especially with the finishes, and the fact that they had the men and the women's match simultaneously was unique. You know, you can't deny that WWE's trying things. You know, they felt somewhat play by numbers last night on Raw, but overall on these big shows they are trying stuff. They tried stuff with the Backlash show. They tried stuff at Extreme Rules, and it didn't go well. So there's a lot of trying things here. Is WWE trying too much would playing it safe in the Performance Center probably in the long run be the best option?
I think so many people, if you just invited like, I don't know how much for Performance Center fits, but maybe 100 or even 50 fans to the Performance Center, and you just did a traditional SummerSlam, it would be such a breath of fresh air. I think the idea of trying these kooky ideas, we make a lot of references to Vince McMahon. Obviously, this is a wrestling podcast, but I always go back to Beyond the Mat where he's chewing on the ice and he just goes, "We make movies," and I think
We make movies, pal.
I think the Boneyard match opened a door for Vince that was like, "Oh, we for real make movies now. Let's have fun with this." And some of it's been great and some of it not so much, but I think more than anything, wrestling fans just want to be able to attend wrestling shows. I think the novelty of making it fun for us to watch through television is over, because now that we've all settled into the fact that this is our real life now, we want to just be able to have some semblance of any kind of, can I attend this show?
Yeah. So people chiming in, once again, we're a live show for you guys listening in the on-demand side. The live people kind of can join in on the virtual couch with us. If you follow us on social media, it's kind of, we let you know when we go live here. Benjamin Jones over in the UK texting in saying, SummerSlam, is it a 2-night event like WrestleMania? At this time, it doesn't seem like it's going to be.
No, I think
as far as we know. And also there is going to be an NXT takeover.
There's a takeover the night before. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are getting 2 nights of WWE that week, and that'll be TakeOver Triple X. No Vin Diesel cooperation there. I would think that would be the big reach is if they got Vin Diesel.
Yeah, involved. Killer Cross might be able to manage Vin Diesel.
Killer Cross could wreck Vin Diesel. He could destroy him.
I think so.
So there's that. We did hear rumblings of something on a boat. You and I joked around last night about the infamous body slam challenge with Yokozuna back in 1994 that led to the Lex Luger Yokozuna match, SummerSlam 93, and the Lex Express.
Have the damn match on the Lex Express. Have the whole show on the Lex Express.
We pitched a bunch of different different things here. Someone texting in here saying wrestling matters, not the arenas. Some fans just care about what's going on in the rings. Some truth to that.
That's an interesting take, because I'm seeing a lot of takes now that, like, okay, just get out of the Performance Center. And my thing is, just be glad that they haven't stopped once. They haven't stopped for a single week. They have not filmed brand new content. They've been straight through, and I think we should be appreciative of that, while also saying, yeah, it's time for something new. But I think more than anything, it's the fact that Beyond Wrestling is running shows. Warrior Wrestling, where you are in Chicago, is going to be running in August.
They're going to be running a show on a football field at a high school.
Right. Game Changer Wrestling is basically back to normal. So, it's very interesting to see that WWE is quickly becoming the last to the dance.
But at the same time, WWE takes on so much more liability, image-wise, optic-wise, insurance-wise, with people. AEW would as well. And they would be held to a greater standard of judgment from people. And also, you bring up those indie events, they're not packing the house. I'm not ripping on any of those organizations. They're doing what they can. I'm hopeful that, especially Warrior Wrestling by me, I know people that work there. I know people that are going to wrestle on the show. And I know people that are working the show behind the scenes. I know people that work with different independent groups around the country. They're really suffering right now. And I understand the need to try and adapt and figure things out. But we still don't have a cure. There's still that safety concern. And I even think after we get a vaccine, there's going to be concern of people waiting to get the vaccine. So our hope is that wrestling comes out of this. And while we try to do these different things, you see some people kind of come up and come down. Some people say this has really benefited AEW in the long run, or this has really benefited, groups like New Japan, which are now running with thousands of fans in Japan and are getting a lot more eyes on what they're doing. With WWE, I don't blame them for trying to do something different with SummerSlam. And SummerSlam is a show that's all about just being in the summer. The aesthetics of it have always been built around, this is the last big thing you get to go enjoy summer before you went back to school. I remember that as a kid. When I went to SummerSlam 1994, I saw the greatest cage match of all time, Owen versus Brett. I remember all summer it was about, I'm going to see SummerSlam. SummerSlam 1998. It was all about Austin versus Undertaker.
I agree with that 100%. Like, my birthday is in August and SummerSlam's in August. And like, for me, SummerSlam, because you spend those first, several years of your life in school, it's the big WrestleMania event that you can stay up late for because you don't have school. So I think that's kind of a missed thing that, this is a big event for like families. This is a family event for some people. And
it is, and also for like dudes like me and you, this is one of those shows where you would get together. You would have like a barbecue or something like that. You would call your wrestling friends over, even just the casual fans to come over and watch it. So,
and it all depends on the card. And WWE did a good job building that last night. We got it confirmed. Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre, confirmed Street Profits.
I thought they could have done a better job putting that together. I really do.
I think it was a no-brainer, especially right now. Wrestling right now is very transparent. And Stephanie talked about this, about how it's not as much about the character. It's just about getting to know the people behind the character. And we all knew they were going with Randy and Drew, and I think they just had to make it official. We also got Andrade and Angel Garza going to fight the Street Profits, but this time the belts are on the line. So it's going to be
They got to throw something on that. They got to throw like a ladder match angle or something.
2 out of 3 falls, something.
Match. Yeah, something to make it special.
Throw the losers over the boat match or something.
Losers get thrown over the boat. Yeah, that's like the angle. There's going to be a sandcastle match if they do it on a beach here. Julian Bell texting in here saying, don't mind it being on a beach. Could we get a bash on the beach? Could this be a show on the beach? I'd be okay with it being on a beach more than a boat.
So I think the only legit card on a beach was Bash at the Beach 95, which features Vader and Hogan in a cage on the beach.
And they did the last Nitro like that too. The last Nitro was like broadcast.
But this is like in the sand. And like they filmed some stuff there. And I think WWE could do it. My concern with the beach is, are you inviting fans? Do we see the crowded beach scenes that we've seen in Florida, in Ozark? We've seen some crowded beaches, and I don't want to invite that scene.
No, I mean, they can get a private beach if they want to do this. They really can, and people talk about the island concept. Is there going to be a Wrestle Island?
So
is there an Isle of McMahon, and not an Isle of Man, an Isle of McMahon.
You said that out loud, and that actually doesn't sound too bad.
Ha 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 ha! Anything goes on the island.
Next thing you know, we've got WWE presents Survivor. Like,
yes.
God, that's brass ring, pal. Wrestling is fun, Kevin.
Yeah. This is a big question. DJ Cassier texting in here while we're talking about SummerSlam. We've seen people do this again at SummerSlam in the past. People win Money in the Bank at the beginning of the summer, and a lot of guys have cashed in at SummerSlam. And WWE Money in the Bank, you know what it is? It's a briefcase. You win it, you can cash in any time. And Otis, the big steak and weights fella, the big goofball that people love on SmackDown, we haven't seen in the past couple of weeks, is he in a position to get that briefcase and cash in? And who's he going to cash in on? Can he even cash in on Braun? The last time we saw him, he was in a swamp. Maybe we'll find out more on SmackDown.
So Otis, I believe, would have to cash in on the SmackDown champion. I think that's how that thing works. But Otis cashing in at SummerSlam would be a wacky occurrence, especially the whole thing. If we can get SummerSlam the movie, and it's just 2 hours on a boat. That's all shot cinematic. I know wrestling.
You're saying if they go all in, like if the whole thing, if it's just like if all the matches are just going on at the same time.
Not at the same time, but like it's shot like a 3-act movie, and it really is all cinematic. Wouldn't be the worst thing to have it end with Otis cashing in. Problem
didn't we already get that at Money in the Bank, and people were kind of wishy-washy on
it? Yes and no, because what I'm proposing here is like, okay, forget the traditional concept for anything. This is just all like where everything's being shot like the final deletion.
Mm-hmm.
So like Otis could cash in there, and it could be chalked up to a cool cinematic moment.
Oh, we got a hot rant. We got a hot rant coming in here. Hot one. Hot rant coming in. Ryan J. Peterson. Nice, unoriginal by WWE Creative. Hopefully Jericho gets a kickback since it's on a cruise.
Well, first of all,
if WWE does something on a boat, they owe Chris Jericho money for this. Do you buy that?
I buy that wrestling fans believe that.
I buy that people like this guy buy that. Ryan, God bless you, pal. Thank you for watching the show, but I don't agree.
I mean, we do appreciate watching the show. I think the constant bickering with WWE, AEW, I'm a little burnt out on. Jericho just did a promo recently, or not a promo, but like something where he said, I'll never return to WWE. And I'm like, okay, pal, I believe you when that comes out of your mouth. But, who knows? Maybe he doesn't ever have to return to WWE. And maybe WWE does say, hey, Chris, how'd you run wrestling on a boat? They're still friends. Hunter could call Jericho and say, all right, what do we need to know here?
People are into our idea. Kevin Durgan texting in saying, hey, WWE, an uncharted island for Survivor Series would be cool. He has the cool sunglass emoji. I believe that's the international language for cool now. Saul Sultan bringing this up. Are we getting a Thunder in Paradise?
Oh, Jesus.
Do you remember? Do you remember Thunder in Paradise, dude?
Thankfully, Thunder in Paradise was on when I was still in diapers. So
dude, you were still in diapers? I was middle school, pumped. That was Friday night when I was a little dork and I couldn't leave my house past a certain time, and I got in trouble all the time in school, but I could find a way to watch TV. I was all about Hulk Hogan and his laser shooting boat and going on adventures. Okay, I was all about that. All right, him just ripping it up. All right. And getting into his boat, and then they would have interior shots inside the boat that looked like there was a lot more space inside the boat than there actually could be. But if you liked speedboat action, where there was almost always a canal, remember that they would always do the speedboat bit on The Simpsons? There's always a canal.
You know what's wild is like they thought that Hulk, you're gonna be a huge star. This is the next Baywatch. Like Thunder in Paradise is it, Hulk. You don't need wrestling anymore. What a wild time. I could see.
Uh-oh.
What do we got?
We got another run-in. It's all run-ins today. Random run-in here. All right. A random run-in from the WrestleZone news desk. You can check him out every Friday on our podcast feed. Go ahead and subscribe. He joins us.
Oh my God, Dominic is on my screen. What happened here?
Yeah. Dominic D'Angelo joins us. You can check him out. He does two Dynamite Dudes with Attitudes. That is our AEW focus show. It comes out every Friday. You can get in the podcast. So thank you so many more people enjoying the audio podcast of the show. So if you don't watch the show live, you can always listen to the audio on demand. You can always watch it on YouTube and Facebook. And there's many different channels you can consume the show. So thank you so much for doing that. Two Dynamite Dudes, a big part of that. Dominic, you and I got into it today. We got a little tiff. And Robert, I'm going to ask you to be in the middle on this one. I don't want you to take sides, okay? Because Robert, as you know, as has been documented on the show in the past, I have not just a bias for WWE. Apparently, I am titillated by it. I am actually aroused by the WWE universe, and that forces me to not be able to take the blinders off and judge the show. Now, you and I, we were kind to a lot of things on Raw last night. Robert and I did the post show. Go check it out. But we did note some things were off. I thought Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre is the right match. It's the right match to go with on SummerSlam. It wasn't put together particularly well. There were some other things, though, on Raw that some people say buried. Oh, people got buried. And Dominic, you and I got into this, specifically in the outcome of one match involving Mustafa Ali, who just moved over to Monday Night Raw from SmackDown a few weeks ago. Had a big debut, had a big win, a 6-man tag match. But last night got tapped out by that big full Nelson from Big Bad Bobby Lashley. Now, Dominic has a side here. Dominic, what's your side of it? Because it isn't mine. It isn't mine. We aren't going to agree. The debate is on. You called me out for this on Twitter. We have to go into it.
Right now, my side is that they're just burying way too many people, like baby faces specifically. You look at not just Mustafa Ali, you look at what they did to Aleister Black, and you look on top of that, Ricochet and Cedric Alexander are just fodder to be pinfall. It's just pinfall fodder, essentially. And, how they handled Mustafa Ali is just, it's sickening as somebody that, because I know this has been WWE's brand going on and on. So it's nothing to be surprised about because this is how they've been booking baby faces for the past couple of years at least. So and they're putting a lot of heat on the heels. So, but you look at how they did Mustafa Ali. He came back. He made a return last week. And now this week he gets a loss. Just a straight up loss to Bobby Lashley. Like, you do not do that if you're trying to build somebody back up. And it shows where Vince specifically positions somebody like Mustafa Ali, who I honestly think could be a top babyface in the company for a lot of different reasons. So that's kind of my stance with Mustafa Ali. And then on top of Aleister Black, how sick are we of seeing somebody's eye potentially getting gouged out? And we got a pretty near visceral shot of that yet again with Aleister Black. Now, granted, his visceral. Arms effed up this or whatever story.
Was it more visceral to you, Dominic, just because he wasn't wearing a mask? To me, physically, it looked a little bit more violent than what we even saw on the pay-per-view.
It kind of did. Well, yeah, that's what I was cringing, like, watching that clip, like seeing his eye get pressed against that stairs. And it's just like,
we may have lost Dominic there for a minute there.
Oh, wow.
Robert, though, chime in on this.
So
chime in on this.
So here's
and stupid. And
I think we got Dominic.
Go ahead.
Here's
Robert.
Dominic. Go ahead, Dom. Dom, can you hear me?
All right. Technical difficulties never fail. Here's the thing. This is what happens when you put all your eggs in a single basket, and then all of a sudden a pandemic hits and you lost the basket and all the eggs are gone. So there are so many people that need to be built up. One of which being Bobby Lashley. Mustafa Ali can bump and feed and bounce all around and make Bobby Lashley look like the CEO of the Hurt Business. And I think at the end of the day, I love Mustafa Ali. There's more money still. There's more untapped potential still in Bobby Lashley. And we need to mine that well right now because his clock is ticking. I can say for certain that Lashley is significantly older than Mustafa Ali. There's always going to be time for Ali. Ali is evergreen. He's a genuine sweetheart of a man. You can always build on that. But right now, I think putting Lashley over was the right call. Aleister Black, I can't defend. I don't know what they're doing with him. I don't know how he became like the side wheel for this Rey Mysterio thing. But I will say thumbs up to Lashley going over Ali. Thumbs down to Aleister Black not being a badass.
All right, so Dominic, you're trying to finish your point. You got cut off there. Go ahead, hop in, bud.
Sure. No. I don't know how you defend. I know, and Lashley is built very well right now. Like what they're doing with him is pretty darn good, and he's finding his groove with MVP, no doubt about it. But like, if you're gonna do that, do it with somebody besides a returning superstar like Mustafa Ali, who
you're saying
has
too soon. You're saying it's too soon for him to take a loss like this.
Yeah, I don't think he should be taking a loss at all. Like right now, whatsoever. Like he should be.
If you're bringing a guy off, Tom. You're lit up here. You took the glasses off.
So
I can't see anything. I tell you what,
I can't see anything, but I can still see what's wrong with WWE.
Anger.
My argument to that would be: who do you put Lashley in the ring with? R-Truth was used as the comedy fodder. Ricochet and Alexander.
You wouldn't care if R-Truth did that because they're not treating R-Truth seriously. His role is just to always be a comedic side character who runs around and does goofy shit, right? So, Dom, I get your point with Ali, but here's my contention with it. If a guy just shows up on the show and roughshod in everyone for 3 weeks, within 2 weeks, the conversation then becomes with, wasn't Bobby Lashley supposed to be a big deal? Then the conversation becomes, aren't Angel, Garza, and Andrade supposed to be a big deal? And then they lose all the time. So now those guys are in a tag team scene. And I saw many people saying, these guys have been losers for months. Why would I care about them now? And I understand the conflict of it's parity booking, 50-50 booking. This guy wins this week, this guy wins the next week, and stuff like that. I understand it. But objectively looking at the big picture, I understand the logic of our villains going into a big time of the year, one of our big quarterly bookends of the year, need to look like guys you want to see lose. And you want to see guys lose when they're winning a lot. All right. And you want to see people get toppled over. You care about a champion losing a title when he's held the title for a long time. People cared about Adam Cole dropping the NXT title to Keith Lee because he had it for over a year. All right. And I think with Bobby Lashley, there is some sense of the booking with him has been so misguided. He's been so goofy and on the line of things. It's still much a reworking project. Even having him take a shot at Drew McIntyre, they did some goofy things with that, and now they want to really set on the lane of him being this big monster. And I understand if you get caught and you get caught in that full Nelson, you're gonna tap. All right, this guy's a legitimate guy. It proves his legitimacy. All right, look at Bobby Lashley. He can mess up half the people on the roster in a real MMA fight, and people kind of believe that. And I think Ali, the one thing I would say is you and I come from a certain generation, especially older fans. I think fans really above the age of like 25 don't really care if a guy taps out nearly as much. There's something conversation to have. When I see a guy tap out, though, like he did, like Ali did last night, there is a sense of, you humiliated him. You made him tap out. You didn't just pin him. You made him tap out. You made him look. What was Brian Alvarez always saying on the wrestling observer? You made him look like a geek. He looks like a geek out there. So I get that, but I also think Ali is a character where he wasn't buried. And here's why I don't think he was buried. He was featured in a backstage segment. He was featured in an in-ring segment. And then he got to have a match, okay? He was featured in 3 separate segments of a 3-hour show the second week back on television. All right. This guy didn't get buried. People get buried or people that just show up without an entrance and lose. Okay. People who are just there as a storyline device to get 2 characters ahead and they're gone the next week. Okay. Shelton Benjamin was buried for a long time. All right. Mustafa Ali's not buried. All right. He's going to be in some type of angle with Bobby Lashley in the Hurt Business headed into SummerSlam. It looks interesting. I'm on board with it. I'm not saying it's the best, most intriguing thing. It's a barn burner, but I do think like it's a pretty good match to put in the mid card and fill out a card. And is it filler? No. Let's see. Maybe it becomes filler. My thing is, I do think with WWE, we get so much stuff from them that there is this rush to say, stamp it. It sucks. It's done. I don't want to see any more of it. It's done. This is cool. Boom. And it's just, there's these snap judgments and nothing really gets to flow because they're putting so much stuff out at you at the same time. And it's just a sense of like everything coming at you at once. And the same way, like you're kind of channel changing with WWE, it feels like you're getting multiple channels of stuff from them, even though it's kind of coming from the same place and it looks the same way. And especially now people now pick their favorites. I saw people doing this with Sasha Banks and Bayley. They now have all the championships. I've heard people say, I'm going to cancel my WWE subscription. Right, Tom? How could you put them over?
I think Sasha and Bayley, they're getting the best kind of booking areas that WWE's been offering lately. But
and they're getting the fan reactions just based on what we see online. You've seen it. Whenever they're on television, they trend in the top 20. Like they're on there and they have their fans.
It's great. And they're doing that well. And but everything from you talk about what more can. Who else are you going to feed to Bobby Lashley? How about anybody? You got so many people on this roster that don't even get utilized.
Not right now, you don't.
Yeah, you do. There's a lot of people you can just build. Get some joke or geek, as Brian Alvarez says, somebody out in the audience. That with some developmental talent.
Pull somebody over the boards. Just Bobby Lashley reaches over and grabs some guy from the boards. It would look, if he did that, it would look like he was doing the claw machine. Remember the claw machine? It
right,
with the plastic board.
Yeah. It's there's so many different options that you have where you don't have to put a returning star in that position whatsoever. There's no reason for it. And something that you mentioned too, it's you put it as you make it. I know it's just SummerSlam, so there's other headline matches, but the key word you said is mid-card. All these things feel mid-card. You're putting somebody like Mustafa Ali at a certain level. His ceiling is being hit right off the bat by making him return 1 week, building him up, but then boom, he loses the next week. It's nonsensical to me to do anything like that to a lot of those stars. So many of these, and I think it's really starting to come to fruition a lot in these past
few. But is that burying him? But that's not my point, though. It's burying him?
You mentioned, yeah, you put him on. You have maybe not in Vince's eyes, and maybe not in the people that are around Vince's eyes, but you put him in segments. Sure, that's fine. Whatever. Guess who else is in plenty of segments is R-Truth, and he's at a certain level. He's not going to be a main eventer.
Winning or losing it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Winning or losing for a guy like R-Truth doesn't matter. I think with Ali, the thing is, here's why I think he isn't buried. that character is designed to give you someone to root for and someone to cheer behind and to be the flag bearer and be the hero and be a superhero. That is the entire ethos of his character. I do the right thing when the right thing is hard to do. And
Then
the
why
way he
have
said
Luke?
no, what? Because you have to cheer for your heroes. They have to be down.
So-
and Return of the Jedi doesn't mean anything if Luke doesn't get his hand cut off at the end of Empire Strikes Back. You need to build up your heels so they can be chased into the big show. Sasha and Bayley are going to get chased into WrestleMania. Ali has someone to chase into SummerSlam.
So the problem I
You
have
root
with
for-
that philosophy, now Kevin is right. In an old school mentality, the problem is this is a learning curve for all promotions, and we'll get to AEW in about a minute, but WWE needs to learn how to book for the modern fan. And the modern fan right now is angry
Fickle?
and I want it and I want it now. And then in 2 weeks, I want this and I want it now.
Which is really hard to read.
It's
really hard to follow.
And that is where I will give them the benefit of the doubt because we don't have a Dwayne Gill, a Barry Horowitz. You can't just throw some schlub in there with Bobby Lashley to bounce around. Ali's got to do the job, and Ali's going to do to the best of his abilities. In 5 years, they're going to realize that he's a patron saint, and they're going to give him the WWE title because it'll be an amazing run. But we got to get there.
When he wins the title, no one's going to care about this. How many times?
It's got to be 5 years too late.
No, let me finish this point. How many times do people think Kofi Kingston was getting buried on the road to WrestleMania? He's getting buried. How could they do this to him? And then he has the most satisfying crowning moment in a stadium full of people at the biggest show of the year and the best match of the year.
You look at a lot of these, like there's plenty of times though too in the past, and you can call it like an old school mindset, but it really boils down just to the basics of wrestling. Like there's this modern fan that their need for immediacy and media set that up for that, social media in general. But you look at plenty of other things. If you have the basic storytelling, sure, a guy is down, but having a guy down doesn't necessarily mean he has to lose a match, and having him and lose credibility already as a competitor just by tapping out clean to an opponent he's supposed to be feuding with. There's so many ways to tell a story to that lazy booking.
Dom, would you have been okay if Lashley won? I'm sorry, it's the little bit of the delay there. Would you have been as upset if Lashley won on a pinfall or there was some shenanigans?
Yeah,
it's the fact that
I still would have been. I still would have been upset.
Okay.
And like I'm just a little bit more upset that it was a tap out. And like I don't think either way, I would still have been upset. I think it's just poor booking, poor creative decision in regards to building somebody up where you have a limitation of baby faces right now that you're like, okay, Drew McIntyre, he doesn't lose. He's protected. He's been protected and he's been well booked. But you look at everybody else, and it's always up and down, up and down. Either Seth Rollins is getting the better of them, Bobby Lashley is getting the better of them. The heels are being built up, and they have been built up for way too long in these past several years going, where it's like the scales have been tipped way too much in favor of the heels instead of baby faces, where you gotta protect these guys because – honestly, it's going to be the baby faces that are going to draw the fans in. The heels are what feeds to the fans to get those baby faces over. You're getting the heels over more so than you are the baby faces. And that's what's been so hair pulling, not that I have any, to give as a viewer, because you're pushed and pulled back. You want to root for this guy, but guess what? The other shoes, more times than not, the other shoe's going to drop with these baby faces. They're going to lose. They're going to be fodder. And that's what happened with Aleister Black. That's what's been happening with Ricochet, Cedric, and now Mustafa Ali.
Again,
what happened there, buddy?
Theoretically, I like this idea and I like this discussion. But this discussion is moot in the mindset of the 2020 fan because they're going to decide tomorrow that, we want Wesley Blake to be a big star. And then it's, why the hell aren't you pushing Wesley Blake? You can't win. I would not want to be in the creative position of Bruce Pritchard. I would not want to be in the creative position of Tony Khan. And speaking of Tony Khan, and this parlays beautifully into this, Cody versus Warhorse. I just want to get this out there. Cody is totally healing it up with this one. He's like, Warhorse is a joke. I don't have time for this. I don't know if the fans like him. Cody is obsessed and intent on getting this idea over that heels and baby faces are subjective to each situation, and I think that is a waste of time, and it's hard to follow, but here we are anyway. It's Cody versus Warhorse. I guess Warhorse is a thing. I don't like it. I just want to see Cody Rhodes get into an actual feud with an AEW superstar at this point.
What do you think of this, Dom? You are our expert. We've talked about your bot. You have expressed your bias that AEW is the company that gets you, and of course we have the Friday show with you and your brother Marcus, which I think is a great show. It's a fun listen. I enjoyed it, so we're now in week 4 or 5 of this open challenge concept that features Cody every week in the ring, one of the top guys in AEW. We had last week with Eddie Kingston, a guy who has been on television with Impact, but wasn't super featured, but has been like a journeyman in independent pro wrestling. He's a guy that people trust. Putting it out there, I got to do some things with him 4 or 5 years ago at AAW doing stickman interview stuff. And he was one of the guys that I knew instantly. I was like, this guy's gonna be a big star. Like just being in a room with him and the way he carried himself. And now we kind of move to another guy that people are just talking about that has been in wrestling a lot less than Eddie Kingston has, Warhorse, where it's very much a defined gimmick. He's kind of like heavy metal Ultimate Warrior for millennials. And this is a guy that fans wanted to see in this position, and this is the first one that fans really pushed for. And now AEW is saying, all right, we're going to reach out outside of our roster and go with a guy. What do you think of the concept of them doing it? I think it's really exciting for a hardcore fan to see someone they may have heard about, someone they know of, pop into a game. It's like watching an NFL game and then like on Sunday, boom, some guy from a big state school is in the game. What do you think of the concept? I think it's been done well. How do they keep it hot?
I think it's going to be a very big litmus test for them, as like you look back last Wednesday, you had Eddie Kingston, who such a immediate punch in the face. You go out there, he hits you. He hits you with his what he says, with his intensity, and that intensity carried over throughout the rest of the show. And the ratings kind of showed that too in a lot of ways. But now you look with Warhorse, who's a completely different character, a completely different body type, so different in regards to everything that Eddie Kingston is, coming in to challenge Cody. And it's kind of a risk in a way, I would say, to do that, but it's also, it's going to be intriguing to see how a lot of fans react, because you have, and this 2020 fan you're speaking of, I think kind of might be a little inaccurate in a way, because we're going off a lot of what social media is. We're not seeing the full picture. We're just getting a segment of society in regards to what social media is doing.
But I mean, Dom, I would say with the pandemic, it's the only real metric we have to read sometimes in terms of like instant reactions.
Sometimes. Absolutely. And but I really don't think that might be exactly what the full picture is being painted in regards to that either. But I think in a lot of ways, Warhorse, I don't know a lot about him, honestly. I think from what I've seen, I think it's entertaining and intriguing. And I don't necessarily think he's maybe an appropriate competitor for Cody, but it's all about execution.
Not appropriate. He's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Appropriate. It's a very special thing to word.
I'm going to be this jerk. Remember when they said that they were going to have a sports-centric presentation and we weren't going to insult your intelligence with the sports and anything like that? Let's call a spade at this point, guys. Raw is more of a sports-centric presentation than AEW is. That's a fact. It is what it is.
Dom, there's some truth to this, and I'll say this because I want to see Warhorse.
Give me some examples of sports presentation, though, with WWE. Give me,
Bobby Lashley running through Mustafa Ali, for one thing.
Bobby Lashley, legitimate MMA fighter, being able to tap a guy out. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And then the focus on rules, the way Sasha won by kind of. I know it sounds
really?
That's a sports thing though, and it's based on a sports presentation. There's rules. Hang on, Dom. Give me a second here. A Warhorse is a very goofy, fun character. I'd love to see that guy in the ring. I'm not against it. I'm just saying with AEW, they say, here are the lines that we're going to play in, right? Here are the lines that we're going to play in. We're going to give you this. But once you step outside the line, that's okay. There's a lot of alarming double standards that sometimes pay off, because last week was great because they just said, we're going to give you balls to the wall action. We're going to give you a falls count anywhere match. We're going to have the Butcher and the Blade throw one of the wrestlers into a poster of that wrestler. Like they're going to go all out, right? My thing is, I don't know if they can do that every single week, when they do, it's really cool. But when they try to do it again, and this is for a newer brand. This is the one critique I have, is they play out things very quickly. Like they play out something very, like the wheel spins with them very, very fast. And I say it because I want it to work. So when I see something get played out very, very quickly, like I'm starting to care less about an FTR Young Bucks match. And that should be the be all end all epic confrontation, And their thing of like, well, WWE's going to give it to you in 4 weeks, we're going to give it to you in 3 months, but we're still going to give you this balls. They're spinning a lot of plates. And there's sometimes where I think if a plate drops, people say, well, we'll let it go. I do think they get a lot more rope with fans simply because they're newer and simply because they're not WWE. And I almost, in terms of perception, go along with that. But when I step away from them, like, you guys are fantastic, but the holes are there. Like the holes are there. Like there's a real good depth near the top in terms of contenders and challengers and champions. But they beyond that, it's a lot of goofy side characters. And I have no problem with it. It's fun.
No, let me be clear though. No, as far as sports oriented field goes, AEW, it's moments of sports oriented stuff. I think provides when they do it provides to be a little bit more clear cut and legitimate than what WWE presents. But I will say that those moments are kind of far and few in between. It's something that that AEW really does need to work on, because if that's the brand that they're pushing, they're kind of a little bit fast and loose and wild here with it. And, there is those times where it's just like, okay. And something that I've noticed too, and I've mentioned this too on the two Dynamite dudes with my brother, is that their long-term booking is good. Like, I think what the overall arc of where they're going with something is positive.
But the short-term stuff seems lighter.
The short-term stuff is very jagged and very staggered. Now,
where something hits and something just feels like it's a holdover to something else.
I think that's kind of across the board with not just AEW, but WWE. I think,
how much do you attribute that to the pandemic, where it feels like, all right, we're holding off on some things in hopes that we can get into an arena with fans and sell tickets and get real reactions?
It certainly has a factor into it. I don't think it's the whole thing. I think a lot of it too is maybe the philosophy and maybe contrast to philosophies that go on backstage at AEW. I don't have any inside source of whatsoever by any mention either. But just from an outsider perspective, I would say it definitely has some to do with it. I bet it's kind of a push and pull of both of those, where both factors are coming into play. Don't get me wrong, I think AEW's product as a whole is more engaging, and what they do is a little bit more structured, and like has a little bit more better flow to it than what WWE presents. But there's still a lot to work on.
One thing to get out. Go ahead. One thing before. Sorry, Dom. This is the three people thing. We're going to talk about this in a second. The double belt situation with Sasha and Bayley, because that became official last night. But Robert, wrap us up on this.
I will say, Dom, I invite you on the show with Kevin and I tomorrow night to talk about the aftermath of the Warhorse Cody match. My issue is, and it's a personal thing, I agree with it from a marketing standpoint. Hey, we're just going to listen to our core base audience. And if they're like a Warhorse this week, well, then I guess Warhorse is on the show. I just want to see some good old-fashioned wrestling, and that's why I like FTR. And it's not a great look that the guy that you touted as the, Babe Ruth of announcing, Jim Ross, is publicly on his podcast trashing the fact that the wrestlers aren't listening to rules. And they even got rid of the tag ropes because the wrestlers just flat out refused to listen to that rule. So they just got rid of it altogether. I think that's a bad look for AEW.
Maybe in the short term it is. But if they actually kind of heed JR's advice and input, maybe in the long term it'll balance out, because at least you're having that voice there. Like, you're having those checks to those balances, where in a lot of ways, hey, a lot of times you don't see that, like, where, but JR's kind of in that realm of Stone Cold, where he's got that freedom to speak his mind, and he does. So when he does, and even he kind of hints at some of the stuff on air that he takes exception with too, when things develop and certain things like that. So I think, yes, maybe like initially, like it's like, oh, hey, the operations maybe aren't all there, but you have that core mindset that JR presents, maybe contrasting with other viewpoints. Hopefully those stars can get aligned and people can see a little bit more eye to eye and then make the whole thing work.
All right, so certainly a debate to keep having. Dom, the run-in window is open for you to pop in with us on Wednesday night for the live stream, and for you guys on the podcast side of things, and on the podcast side of things, definitely check out that show on Friday. I know some people get the podcast. I'll pick out this show. We have a ton of stuff for you in the podcast feed right now. The X Division champion from Impact Wrestling is on with us. Chris Bay came on and said that he is more than just a trend. He is not a fidget spinner, as another Impact wrestler called him. And we got into that with him as well. Eric Stevens talked about continuing his career when he thought he would retire recently. And you spoke yesterday with Ross and Marshall, the Von Erichs of MLW. Big news with them. So exclusive interviews you can only get at WrestleZone.com and in the WrestleZone podcast feed. So thank you so much. We have hours and hours of free content. No Patreon, no pay window. All right. We have a lot of stuff for you guys for free. So go listen to it, enjoy it, and read it at WrestleZone. I need to talk about that. One question to get out of here before we're done. Sasha Banks wins the Raw Women's Championship in nefarious fashion last night via countout, because that was one of the stipulations. And now, more importantly, though, it sets up a situation that cements Sasha Banks and Bayley, the two most socially media over superstars currently in WWE, to have not just the SmackDown Women's Championship, but they also have the WWE Women's Tag Team titles and the Raw Women's title. 2 women, 4 titles, 4 belts. This is quite the situation. Robert, I know this is something you've been following, and maybe you and I have gone back and forth on it. And now it seems like it's Sasha and Bayley versus the world now, isn't it?
It is. And like I said last night, I welcome this. As a fan of Sasha Banks, I'm always down for her being champion again. I think Bayley and Sasha have thrived in the pandemic where they're just playing off of each other. However, it's alarming to me that Charlotte is gone, Becky is gone, and suddenly within less than 3 months, we have all of the gold on the remaining 2 4 horsewomen. And that's concerning to me, because we do have this public outcry for more for Naomi, more for Dana Brooke, more for Natalia. Are they relying too heavily on established stars? Because at least in the women's division, hey, we have 2 established stars we can rely
on. I'm of the thought they're over. And you talk about AEW listening to fans, like, what are people saying? What do fans want? What are they saying? Sasha and Bayley are over. And in terms of finding out who's getting real reactions right now, you don't have a crowd, and you just have social media. You just have those social media instantaneous reactions to go with. I don't think there's a more imperative look at who can do it. When they went over to NXT for a few weeks and they had those matches, that flipped the script. They got to beat AEW in an overall viewership number. And you talk about, if you talk to a young female wrestling fan under 25, talk to a dozen of them. I would be surprised if more than half of them didn't have Sasha or Bayley on their short list of their favorites. They have their following, and they bring that following with them, and that following is with them even though they're heels. They like them bad girls doing bad things. All right, and I think if you listen to them, this is what the audience is telling you, and it'll be fun because the audience also loves, this is another thing we've seen with female wrestling fans, they love to see people get pissed off, which is what any wrestling fan really wants, but in a new way of they love the cattiness of it. They love the other girls looking in at Sasha and Bayley, having all the gold, being too really nasties. You know what I mean? Just wow, like, look at what we got. Like that type of thing, which is childish, but wrestling is fun. It's supposed to be like this. And you're not supposed to like them, and you want to see them lose, and people will chase them, and they're doing a good job with it. And they're embracing it. And I think, but my thing is, well, who steps up now? Like who is that person to bring it? Dom, who in WWE with the women would you like to see kind of go after Sasha and Bayley?
Well, you know, how they kind of booked Shayna Baszler yesterday, brawling out with Nia Jax and stuff like that. You could really kind of get her over as somebody as a good adversary in contrast to both those types of personalities, and just have her just slug it out with one of them too at some point in time. You know, as far as Bayley and Sasha having all the belts and kind of being just the primary focus of the women's division, I'm kind of fine with it too at the moment, because you look at it, this has kind of been WWE's MO. Even, you know, like you look at John Cena and how long they ran with him and put him at the top. And you know what? They swept across they used a broad brush with him and got a lot of different, you know, marketing abilities and made him a top star. So like, and people have been clamoring for Sasha and Bayley to kind of get their just due for a very long time. And this,
but now we're complaining. So this is what Robert said about the 2020. Now we're complaining about them getting it. Now we're saying, well, I got it now. And now what else are you going to do? Like, so it's like, we can't even let them have it. You know, we have to complain about them getting it. So I'm of the thought, I was like, I like the idea of it. It adds more tension. It makes these titles mean something. That two women have them. We got to get those belts off of them. You know, I want to see the women's locker room getting together saying like, all right, this is enough. We got to get this off these guys. You know, we're not going to have this anymore.
I like it. I like it. I think that just how it was booked yesterday was just bad though. Like a count out and that's how you change the titles. It's just the setup of that was just, come on. It's like, if you want to get the belt on Sasha, find a different way. It's just like ham-fisted booking in my opinion.
Convoluted.
But yeah.
Convoluted. Yeah.
Convoluted.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the run-in today, Dom. I appreciate the run-in out of nowhere.
Thanks for having me. I was fired up, man. I was just shaking my head a couple times last night as I was seeing what was going on during Raw and grinding my gears a little bit. So thanks for having me on. Let me
really grinds my gears when people don't enjoy wrestling. I want to enjoy wrestling.
Oh.
And you know how you're going to do that? You're going to do that by subscribing to the WrestleZone podcast, so you can get this show 4 days a week. Dominic's Two Dynamite Dudes with Attitudes, all the awesome interviews Bill Pritchard and Dominic are working on. You're also going to check out Fightful, because I'm over there, and WrestleZone when I'm over here too. And
he had to get his plug in. He had to get it in. Dom, do you see that? You see what he did? He was staying with the team. He was staying with the team, and then he had to go and do that.
An expert gets in every single plug they can, because we've been over this, boys. I don't have any affiliation to anything but the almighty dollar. Now, that being said, when you're watching wrestling, Dominic, whether it's MLW on Wave or any of the other platforms they're on, Kevin, whether it's WWE and you're sitting there rock hard and ready, you got to do one thing, and that is simply just enjoy wrestling, but not as much as Kevin, because that's a little weird. Enjoy wrestling.